Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
The Tennessee Titans found their number one receiver. Will the QB situation in Nashville be tenable, though, to make this matter? Also, the Dallas Cowboys have some decisions to make, and the Lakers are not serious contenders in the Western Conference this season. I'm Peter Bukowski, starting your day with the can't-miss stories and biggest debates in sports. You're Locked On Sports Today.
Searching all major sports. Found.
Let's start with the biggest story.
After the Arizona Cardinals parted ways with DeAndre Hopkins, the reports were, and in fact, DeAndre Hopkins said he wanted to go to a contender. Well, he didn't. He went to the Tennessee Titans, who desperately needed some help at receiver. And if you're mad about that, he has a message for you via Twitter. All y'all sports experts and analysts, be mad at your management, not me. Instead, he goes to Tennessee on a reported 2 years, $26 million deal. Incentive laden, we assume. We'll see when we get the full structure of that contract when those details come to light. Tyler Rowland from Locked On Titans joins me now. And Tyler, the Titans are not Super Bowl contenders per se, but in desperate need of receiver. It seemed like this was a perfect marriage of two things: targets and money. Does it go deeper than that?
I think that there's one other layer. If you're peeling back the layers of the onion of how this decision made, you're 100% right about targets. The Titans had 190 targets available with nobody on the depth chart at wide receiver other than Treylon Burks, who anybody could name. So obviously Hopkins would get a great opportunity. You look at New England, they just signed Juju Smith-Schuster. They have Kendrick Bourne. They have Devontae Parker. And while Hopkins is a better player than those guys, you know that they, had more competition for snaps just based on the names that they had available. So that was there as well. Money. And it's not just the Titans offering more money. No state taxes in Tennessee is a big factor here as well. And the Titans play 11 of their 17 games in a no state tax state. So that's big too. But I think the last thing is relationships. Because not only did the Titans have an advantage with having Mike Vrabel and Tim Kelly, who was on the offensive staff in Houston for 6 years with Hopkins, not only having both of those guys, Vrabel from the head coaching perspective, hey, practice schedule, all these things, I'm going to work with you. But hey, Tim Kelly knows where you like the ball, what formations you like, what routes you like to run, all that. Not only did the Titans have the advantage there, but Bill O'Brien was on the other side. And if you go back to some of the stuff Michael Irvin said on Get Up a couple of years ago about the interactions between Hopkins and Bill O'Brien, him comparing him to Aaron Hernandez in a meeting, being unhappy about the mothers of his children being around the facility, making comments there. There was a report that wasn't an issue, but anybody who's just a human on earth, somebody says stuff like that to you, it's hard to go work for them again. So the relationships, I think, were a key factor in this, that other than just the money and the opportunity that Hopkins wants, I think the comfortability with the relationships and the people you're going to be working with was a big plus for the Titans, at least compared to New England.
Yeah, I think when you look at this offense, though, you go, okay, they used a first-round pick on Treylon Burks, who's a big physical receiver who can work vertically, although we didn't see it at Tennessee last year the way we did at Arkansas when he was in college. Beyond that, you mentioned some of the name recognition issue that these receivers have, but it's also a skill set issue. So where do you think DeAndre Hopkins actually fits in when it comes to this offense?
Well, I actually think that while Treylon Burks was limited last year because of injuries and he had conditioning issues early in the year coming out of the draft that I think affected him throughout the year, he's past that, leaner, slimmer. He's in the best shape of his life. Pete, best
shape of their life season.
We're in that season, often, right? Yeah. Anyway, but I think it's actually true with Burks, who's going into his second season compared to his rookie all season. And I think that although Burks didn't show everything that he could have to get people excited, Pete is a guy who covers the Packers. Burks had that big catch on Jair Alexander last year at the end of that matchup between the Titans and the Packers, and unfortunately,
basically sealed the game.
Yes, he did. And he gave the too small sign. And it was kind of a moment for a reserved rookie where it's like, this guy's breaking out of his shell and becoming what we thought he could be when they picked him in the first round. I think that Burks, because of his size and his ability to go vertically, I think he'll show that more this year personally. I'm kind of bullish on his ability to do that. I think that now Burks becomes that field stretcher. When the Titans get in their two wide receiver sets with a wide receiver on either side, two tight ends. They run that play action bang. They're going to be able to have Burks threatening the single high safety going deep because teams are putting 8 in the box, getting single high looks. Burks is going to be able to threaten deep. And if you don't respect that, Tannehill's going to let it fly. And Burks is big enough and strong enough to go up and get it over top of cornerbacks he's got on his back. If that safety respects that, well, now Hopkins is going to be that guy who's crafty and smart, can get in those windows and sit down, and understands how to read defenses and use all that experience that he has. And he can be that intermediate threat that Tannehill can get the ball to quickly over the middle, and he can kind of dart around. And I think both those guys can interchange those roles, which will make it harder for defenses to kind of lock things down. And I see Burks as more of the vertical guy, but having two guys now that can reasonably do both of those roles on those play action passes, I think it's just a huge, huge addition for the Titans. And it, because of how bad the receiver group is and how good Hopkins is, it totally flips the dynamic in my mind of what they're capable of going forward.
Stay up to date all year on the Tennessee Titans by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Titans on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Thanks for making Locked On Sports Today your first listen. Coming up, the Dallas Cowboys have some important decisions to make ahead of the franchise tag deadline in the NFL. Before we get to that, tennis has its new it boy. Take your first swing at betting Major League Baseball on FanDuel and get 10 times your first bet in bonus bets, up to $200. That's right, just bet $20 and you'll land $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. That's $200 in bets to bet on everything from the money line to the point total to who you think is going to hit the first home run. The Yankees head out west to take on the Angels in FanDuel. Not liking a bounce back for the Bronx Bombers, FanDuel has the Yankees plus 112. Of course, you can also combine multiple prop bets in a single game for a bigger payout with FanDuel Same Game Parlay on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. There's no better place to bet on Major League Baseball than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So sign up today and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get up to $200 back in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball. Carlos Alcaraz outlasted an epic duel with Novak Djokovic to win the Wimbledon Final on Sunday. The match lasted 4 hours and 42 minutes. That's longer than Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning, and was the third longest final in Wimbledon history. Alcaraz became the third youngest men's winner in the Open era. He's just 20 years old and 72 days. Alcaraz is the #1 player in the men's world rankings and has barely scratched the surface of his career, playing only his 4th tournament on grass. This is remarkable stuff. Alcaraz has proved to be a quick study on the surface. In 2 previous appearances at the All England Club, Alcaraz has finished no better than the 4th round. He displayed marked improvement last year, but nothing about his performance signaled he would go all the way this year to do it against Djokovic. Certainly icing on the cake in this one. And a former young phenom, now in his 30s and still a phenom, Rory McIllroy birdied the last 2 holes in a whipping win Sunday for a 2-under-68 to win the Genesis Scottish Open. This is Rory's first win on Scottish soil. McIlroy was 1 shot behind Robert McIntyre when he played the slope to near perfection on the par 3 17th to set up a 4-foot birdie putt to tie for the lead. Then he delivered what McIlroy called one of the best shots of his career, a 2-iron into the wind for 10 feet for a final birdie. It was a good time to win for McIlroy too. He heads south to Royal Liverpool for the Open Championship. There he will try and end his 9-year drought in majors. McIlroy also became the first ever player to win the Scottish Open, the Irish Open, and the Open Championship. On the diamond, the Milwaukee Brewers humbled the Cincinnati Reds over the weekend.
Hi, everybody. Chuck Freeman here from Locked On Brewers. We'll drop the episode coming up a little bit later on Sunday night. But how good was this bullpen this weekend? It was the Piamps, Peguero, and Williams bullpen on Saturday night. Another shutout, and then they come right back. Hobie Milner gets the job done, gives those other guys a rest. Williams cleans up, and this is after Hauser pitches into the 6th inning. And the Brewers get another home run from Christian Yelich, and Andrew Montestero with a big RBI base hit, a bloop single that gives the Brewers the lead in that 8th inning. Let's be honest, we thought the Brewers Do we really think the Brewers are going to sweep this 3-game series in Cincinnati? I thought after they got the first 2, we'd have the Sunday lineup and then go from there. But now they got the day off on Monday, heading to Philly on Tuesday. We'll talk about it coming up on Locked On Brewers in a little bit. Looking forward to the show. A sweep in Cincinnati.
The New York Mets, the scuffling New York Mets, salvaged the weekend series with the LA Dodgers thanks to a dramatic walk-off win.
Well, what looked like a pretty brutal weekend of Mets baseball ended with the silver lining as they were able to walk off a victory in extra innings to salvage something against the Los Angeles Dodgers. This is Ryan Finkelstein, the host of Locked On Mets, and what we saw this weekend was some pretty good pitching performances by Kodai Senga and Max Scherzer, but absolutely no offense, which leads you to wonder, is this team destined to be a seller at the deadline? And that's all we'll be discussing on tomorrow's show, but also we get to rejoice in a night where the Mets were able to pull something off, and Louis Guillorme was the hero with a walk-off hit. So we'll be talking about all those different things on tomorrow's edition of Locked On Mets.
And the New York Yankees found some way to blow not one, but two-run leads in a single game.
We're going to try and be positive. This is Stacey Gotsoulias of Locked On Yankees. Yankees dropped Sunday's game 9-7 to the Rockies in extra innings. Positive. Let's be positive. Garrett Cole, 6 innings, 1 run, 11 strikeouts. He moves into first place on the Yankees list of starters who've had the most starts with 10 or more strikeouts. Ron Guidry was sitting there pretty in the first place spot with 23, and now Garrett Cole has 24 of those starts. It's amazing when you think about it because Ron Guidry played with the Yankees a really long time. Garrett Cole has not, so it just shows you how great Garrett Cole has been for the Yankees. Other positives, Oswaldo Peraza comes up and makes an immediate impact on the team. That's about it. So watch Locked On Yankees. We're going to talk about the series. We're going to preview the Angels series, and it's Minor League Monday, which is everyone's favorite day of the week.
First, the Dallas Cowboys gave Zeke Elliott a lucrative long-term extension. Then he didn't play out that extension. Then they franchise tagged Tony Pollard. And now there will be no extension done with Tony Pollard, leaving some questions about the running back room in Dallas. Joining me to help answer some of those questions, Marcus Mosher from Locked On Cowboys. And it was seemingly easy to figure out what Jerry Jones and company were going to do with Ezekiel Elliott. It has apparently become more difficult to predict what's going on with Tony Pollard. Where are we right now with these two?
Well, the Cowboys just like to give running backs a lot of money, right? And they're giving Tony Pollard over $10 million this year.
$10.1 million,
which is he's one of the highest paid running backs in the league. We've seen guys get cut like Dalvin Cook, Kareem Hunt, Leonard Fournette. We saw Joe Mixon take a pay cut, right? The running back market is just non-existent. But Tony Pollard's still getting paid. I think he's very happy to play in the $10 million franchise tag. He's only 25 years old with only 600 career touches. I think he looks at it like, I have another good season. Maybe I can, get another franchise tag or parlay it into a long-term deal. We'll see.
Are long-term deals still out there for running backs? Because you mentioned Joe Mixon, Dalvin Cook, Aaron Jones also took a pay cut. Like it's getting bleak out there to the point that we've had media members, prominent media members, not just like the scofflaw media members go, we need to change something in the salary cap. Like, what is this out there?
Probably not, but I do think Tony Pollard is one of the few running backs that I think you could justify a long-term extension because of the lack of touches, right? Again, I'm going to mention it, 631 career touches in the NFL.
That's a Derrick Henry season.
Yeah, honestly, that's 2 seasons of Derrick Henry, right? Or it's 2 seasons of Josh Jacobs. And if you go back even a little bit further, when he was at Memphis, he wasn't a running back that got a lot of touches. He was playing slot receiver. So if you're going to pay a running back, paying a guy like Pollard who doesn't have a lot of wear and tear on his body, probably not a bad idea. However, Peter, I just don't see teams paying running backs really at all going forward.
So this is a Cowboys team all in for this season. They bring in Brandon Cooks. They bring in Stephon Gilmore. They have one of the more star-studded off seasons in the NFL, and they look like they are a bona fide contender in the NFC. How much do you think that plays into this decision right now with Tony Pollard?
I mean, I think a little bit. I just don't buy that the Cowboys are all in because, yes, they have some big contracts coming up, but they've got a lot of really good young players like CeeDee Lamb, Micah Parsons, Trayvon Diggs. I think they just look at the running back position as we've got this guy coming off a major injury who's never been a workhorse back before. Let's see him do it before we invest any more money into him.
In a way, is it actually good then that Mike McCarthy saved him a little bit and didn't use him as much as maybe Cowboys fans wanted to see him use? I mean, this conversation is happening right now on Packers Twitter with Mike McCarthy and Aaron Jones, because it's like, he's fresh now. He's still really good. A lot of running backs at that age are declining and Aaron Jones isn't. Like, is there a silver lining maybe here a little bit?
Yeah, maybe, right? Like, because he is 25 years old. You feel like, hey, maybe his best football is still in front of him. But at the same time, what would have happened if the Cowboys would have just given him more touches in 2021 and 2022 when Ezekiel Elliott was clearly declining? How much better would that have made the offense? I don't know. But I do think McCarthy has maybe helped prolong Tony Pollard's career at least a little bit. So I expect him to be one of the best running backs in the league this year.
What do you expect for a workload this season? Because as I mentioned, no Ezekiel Elliott stealing touches from him. So are they going to have to still stay with the committee? Is this going to be full bore with Tony Pollard? What's the plan here?
I think when you start to get into like the season-long projections, those can get a little funky, right? But if you're looking at like an average game, I think the Cowboys would love to give Pollard like 16 carries and 4 receptions a game and maybe try to keep him off the field in some of those goal line situations. And maybe it's a Ronald Jones or a Malik Davis that handles that. But I think somewhere between 18 and 22 touches per game for Tony Pollard, I think makes sense because you want to keep him fresh as you get in December and January. But you also need to give him a lot of touches because outside of CeeDee Lamb, he's the best player on your offense. So I think Mike McCarthy and the rest of that coaching staff is going to have to try to find the right balance of touches for Pollard this year.
Stay up to date all year on the Dallas Cowboys by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Cowboys on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Coming up, why the Lakers are not a serious threat to win the Western Conference this season. LeBron is coming back. The Lakers just made it to the Western Conference Finals in last year's playoffs, so why is Adam Mars telling Wes Goldberg that the Lakers are not serious contenders this year on a recent episode of Locked On NBA?
I think they're good. I thought they were good after they made the Russell Westbrook trade last year. I think they're a legit contender with LeBron James and Anthony Davis at the top as long as they could stay healthy, which is always the asterisk with them. I still have the Nuggets as the overwhelming favorites. But if we're trying to put a group of contenders together, I think the Lakers are firmly in that, obviously with the Phoenix Suns. Are there any other teams that I'm missing in there? Or would you disagree with any of those teams that I already had in there?
I'm going to disagree with the Lakers. I mean, the part here, you talk about a top 8, and D'Angelo Russell was the first guy you mentioned when you were going to the bench there. D'Angelo Russell was one of the reasons the Lakers got swept in the playoffs last year. And the team was too afraid, and everybody knew it, and the team was too afraid to bench him. He continued to start and continued to play. To me, when you re-up a guy, I'm with you. I think it's more of a long-term play to trade him at the deadline. But either way, you re-up a guy, and then that's supposed to be one of the strengths for your roster coming back. Like, it's very rare. The framing around the Lakers is always this way, where for some reason we're missing the plot. Michael Malone in the playoffs last year felt so good about D'Angelo Russell being on the court that he brought it up in game 1 of this press conference, saying, hey, that's a guy that's really been positive for them in the playoffs. It'll be interesting to see if they continue to play him. Of all the cocky things Michael Malone said, daring the other coach to play D'Angelo Russell in a playoff and then him playing and starting the rest of the series, that was the wildest one that somehow flew under the radar.
Look, I'm not a big market guy. I live on the East Coast, but I'm from the Midwest, so I'm the last person to be baselessly defending the LA Lakers. But they played the Nuggets harder than any team in last year's playoffs. Yes, they were not exactly a virtuoso team in the regular season, but by the end of the regular season, they were one of the 3 or 4 best teams in the Western Conference. And then in the postseason, what did they do except win every series in front of them except against the team that won the title? And they got better this offseason. What exactly is going to happen with the Golden State Warriors, a team they beat? Yes, they're not as good as Denver, but no one is. And if there's someone who can do miraculous things, it's LeBron James, even at his age. Who else in the West are you going to hang your hat on other than the Nuggets? Okay, the Warriors, but they're another year older, and they just added another old player in Chris Paul. No one on the Clippers seems to be able to play more than 40 games and can't be trusted to be healthy in the postseason. The Suns are stacked at the top with talent, but don't have a lot of depth, and their best player, Kevin Durant, has had serious injuries basically every year for the last 5 years. So why would the Lakers not be contenders exactly? They were the second best team in the West last year. That seems pretty good to me. Maybe I'm old school. And finally, Tyreek Hill has a clear goal for this season. He said on his podcast that he will break the 2,000-yard receiving mark, something that's yet to be accomplished in NFL history. The NFL record for receiving yards in a single season is 1964, not the year, the number, 1,964 yards, set by Detroit Lions wide receiver Calvin Johnson Jr. That was back in 2012. Hill isn't totally off base here, though, as he was on a pace to break 2,000 yards last year after eclipsing 1,100 in just 9 games before a slew of injuries to Dolphins quarterbacks derailed the offensive flow. Hill also said he got by solely on athletic ability as he didn't quite grasp the playbook in his first season. Thanks for making Locked On Sports today your first listen. Now find your favorite team's podcast and make them your second listen. Coming up tomorrow, who has the most work to do in training camp as we near the opening of the NFL's preseason? So at least until tomorrow, stay locked on sports today.
Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
For more episodes of Locked On Sports Today, go to our video on demand. Click on Sports at the top of your screen. There, you'll find past episodes of Locked On Sports Today, plus other Locked On shows on demand.